Welcome back, everyone, to the Madness and Grace podcast. It is the last episode of 2023 of the Madness and Grace podcast, which is wild. We've done 2 episodes a month, so this is our 24th episode, and we're really excited about all the stuff we have coming up next year. Yeah, how's it going, Matt? How do you feel about our last episode?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, when you said, let's do this, I said, oh, no one ever listened to it. So, but it's gone well. We've had some good listeners, so it's been fun. So hopefully we can do some more and interesting things in 2024, but I'm excited to finish out the year.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited about all the new stuff we have coming up next year. We're going to kind of do the same we did this year, a mix of guests, different topics, maybe some new segments. So lots to look forward to. And yeah, I'm really excited. Today, as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about self-diagnosing with mental illness. Obviously, you can't officially self-diagnose yourself, but unfortunately, in the world of social media, the internet, you have every bit of information ever at the tip of your finger, and it can be easy to self-diagnose. And that's something that I see a lot, specifically on TikTok. I will see a lot of people making videos and say, hey, do you have X, Y, and Z symptoms? Well, you have ADHD. Or, do you have blah, blah, blah? Well, you are clinically depressed. It just gets really easy to be like, oh, that sounds like me. Maybe I do. And then, that can cause some problems if, you're not really being diagnosed by a mental health professional. So, Matt, I just wanted to talk to you about what are like the potential issues of relying on these unverified sources.
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd say is, every problem that you have is not a disorder. And so I think, unfortunately, in our culture today, that that's the first place we run, is that, oh, well, I didn't do well on this, or I feel this way, or this is happening in my life and I don't like that. And so we run to try to find some kind of explanation for whatever that is, but from a pathological perspective. Sometimes you just are having problems, and sometimes you just don't feel right, and sometimes you're sad, and it's not always a disorder. So that's the first thing I would say, because I see that a lot. People come in and they say, well, I'm just absolutely convinced I have this. And, being sad is not being depressed. I mean, that's different. Right. I think the second thing is, most of the time, the internet's a wonderful place sometimes for information. Sometimes it's information overload, and you don't really know where you're getting the information. So, I'll look on there. Someone will say they looked up the criteria for this or that, and it may be kind of a paraphrased version of the actual diagnostic criteria. And a lot of times it's pretty vague. And so you may have some of them, and we all may have some of them at different times. It's really not just about having symptoms at any time. It's about having certain numbers of symptoms at the same time. It's about the amount of time you have them, the intensity you have them. So there's a lot more that goes into diagnosis than just, well, here they listed out 4 or 5 things, and I know at some point in my life I've had 3 of them, and so that means I have X. And so, really let diagnosis be done by someone who's trained to do that. If you think you have an issue, well, then, let's go talk to a professional. I think, again, that's the problem. There's the stigma, and someone says, well, I'd rather get online and figure out what's wrong with me than actually go. And I would say take a little bit of advice from what happens with people when they get online and they look up physical illnesses. All of a sudden, they think they have oh my goodness, this red bump on my hand is some horrible cancer. I looked it up, and it's and that's the same thing that happens with mental health problems. And so we all know people that have done that with physical illnesses. It's the worst thing you can do is look that up. Well, the worst thing you can do is look this stuff up.
And I think where it becomes the most dangerous is obviously seeking out certain types of medication or the wrong type of treatment, and you didn't consult with a mental health professional, and you go to your doctor and you say, well, I want this prescribed, or I want, this kind of thing because it helped my friend, or it helped Susie Q on TikTok, and I think it'll help me. I think really sitting down with a professional is the most important thing that you can do.
If you don't feel comfortable going to a mental health care provider, like, for some reason you're shamed by that, or you don't want to do that, well, then, there are steps up to that you could do. I mean, why don't you go sit down and talk to a close friend and tell them what you're feeling or thinking, and see what their thoughts are, not to send them out to the internet, or go sit down with a pastor, or a minister, and ask them, because they counsel people all the time. They may not be there to diagnose you, but get their feedback on, have you had other people that have had this problem? Can you give me some thoughts on that, to help you figure out whether, or give you kind of a little bit lower level intensity person you can talk to that you might feel more comfortable with. But self-diagnosis is just, people come in. I'll tell you this. I'll just give you just kind of a real world example. We have a clinic here at the Open Healing Center, and people show up here all the time that have been struggling with their mental health problems for years, and they just can't get any relief, and they can't move forward. And they've been receiving treatment. Many of them, not all of them, but some of them have been receiving treatment from professionals, and they're misdiagnosed. The professional missed the diagnosis, and that's why the person wasn't making any progress, because they weren't being treated for what they really had. And so, professionals can miss diagnoses. And so certainly we're going to miss it if we just jump out onto the mega net out there and expect it to kind of give us the answers. So I do think that it can be helpful to at least start to give, maybe look something up, in the sense of letting you know that there are treatments out there, not from a hope-filled perspective, not so much that you're going to go try to find your own treatment. Again, that's dangerous. But the other thing I would say, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about this as well, don't try to self-diagnose other people. Have you seen that? Where someone's like, "Oh, I looked this up, Emily. You said this the other day, and I looked it up, and now I think you have."
Yeah, something interesting, something that I've seen a lot just in a lot of young people online, is a lot of people think that they are autistic because of certain symptoms or certain ways of thinking. And of course, you have to be diagnosed by a professional to be diagnosed autistic. But I will see comments on people's videos and be like, "Do you know that you're autistic? Or do you know that you're this? Or do you know that you're that?" And it's, who are you to tell me what I am? Or, whatever. And so, yes, I have seen that, where people are making these assumptions about people on the internet. And then I'm sure the person receiving that is like, well, wait, am I autistic? Am I this? Am I that?
Autism was is looked at as a spectrum,
right?
And that changed to that a few years ago, and now people will say, "Oh, well, I'm on the spectrum," or "He's on the spectrum." And you can be odd. You can have odd behaviors. You can be not very social, not make eye contact. You can be kind of a nerdy person and not have autism. And so it's, just like you can be sad, very sad, and not be depressed. I think, one of the things I would say to people that are really into the self-diagnosis thing, first off, it never goes well, the self-diagnosis thing. But, when we're talking about disorders here, we're not, in disorder, that's a meaningful designation. So for a person to have a disorder, it means that whatever this group of symptoms or problems they're struggling with has caused them to cross over a line where they're now dysfunctional in their living and how they live. They're in some sphere of their life, relationships, school, work, whatever. They're not able to function normally because of this. It's not just that, like, oh, well, he's on the spectrum, but everything's wonderful in his life. It would be impairing the person in some way. And even then, that doesn't necessarily mean it's autism. So we really have got, OCD is another one I hear all the time. Every time somebody's kind of a neat freak or real tidy, oh, we have OCD. It does give you, and in some instances, it may give you an excuse for problems that you're having that may or may not be your own doing. And it also, in some instances, I've found when people do the self-diagnosis thing, they use it as a shield to say, well, there's no, this is just how I am, so things can't get better.
Yeah.
And, what I would say that, really one of the broader kind of societal negatives that come out of the self-diagnosis obsession is just kind of the minimization or trivializing of real mental health problems. And so if everybody's got OCD, well, then OCD is not that big a deal. And OCD is a serious psychological disorder that impairs a person's ability to function. If everybody struggles with depression, well, then, then depression's just kind of a common, and no, it's not. I mean, it's one of the most common mental health problems, but, we're only looking at about 17 to 20% of the population. If everybody that said they were depressed was depressed, I mean, 80% of the population have depression. So same thing with anxiety disorders, or as you said, autism, you see. So, I mean, it trivializes them when people that you're working with or going to school with or hanging out with are telling you, oh, well, I have that. And then it's like, they don't need to get treatment. They just kind of live their lives and like, oh yeah, I've got OCD and none of, but they've never really been diagnosed. The other thing is most people say these things because they've never really known anyone has any of these disorders.
That's true.
If you know somebody that really has OCD and you've seen that, one thing that I always find kind of interesting is people do not, they don't self-diagnose like schizophrenia. I'm like, oh, I'm delusional today. You do see bipolar a lot.
That is one I see thrown around quite often.
You see that a lot. And a lot of times people then just think what bipolar is just being moody. Like, oh, she's so bipolar. Yeah. Well, that's bipolar is not just being moody, but doing that, that self-diagnosis and calling these kind of lower level subclinical issues kind of disorder, it ultimately damages people that really have the disorder, because it makes society as a whole think of these things as more trivial. They're just kind of things we throw around. And when someone really has it, they don't understand why. I mean, I'll give you a good example. From a pastor. A pastor told me one time, oh, I've worked with lots of women that have depression. I just go through the Psalms with them and they all get better. And, the problem with that is, I don't have any problem with going through the Psalms with people. And I think pastors should work with people that have depression. The problem is, if you have clinical depression, major depressive disorder, just reading through the Psalms is not going to take that away.
Right.
And, I don't doubt that he had worked with women who were sad or
going
down
through a hard time.
Blue, right.
Yeah.
And may even said they were depressed, but that's not how you help depression. That might be part of a broader treatment plan, but see what that does now is that when the next person shows up and they really do have major depressive disorder and they don't get better when he goes through the Psalms with them, they're going to not only be disappointed that they haven't gotten any better, but they're going to start to question their faith. And are they just a bad Christian?
That kind of brings me into my next point, and I kind of wanted to talk about the flip side. So not necessarily someone who is self-diagnosing themselves with something, but someone who may be kind of in denial that they have a problem. They don't want to seek out professional care because they just believe that their faith and that maybe the church can kind of pull them out of it. And like you just said, if you're suffering from clinical depression or a serious mental health disorder, it's not going to pull you out. And so, in the Bible, it says in Philippians, do not be anxious. And people can misinterpret that to be, well, just don't be anxious. Just don't have problems. Just trust God. But it's important to know that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Just like you said, you can incorporate your faith into your treatment plan. You can make it a part of it. Like you just said, it can be kind of part of the broader treatment plan. So, Matt, do you have any words of encouragement you could give those who may be feeling like they're wrong, for seeking out professional help, and maybe some instances or some resources about? I know obviously Hope and Healing Center, we're faith and evidence-based treatment here. Just some words of encouragement, someone who might be feeling like seeking out treatment would be going against their faith.
Yeah, I think that, I think it's very important to incorporate faith into our care, be that for mental health problems or any problem. Here at the Hope and Healing Center, we look at people as kind of having different aspects to their being: body, mind, soul, and relationships, body, mind, spirit relationships. And so I think it's an important part of the broader thing. I think to focus on any one aspect is really kind of deny how the person's been created. So, I do think there are mental, or I should say spiritual aspects to mental illness. I don't think that most of the mental disorders that we've talked about here on this podcast over the year that we've been doing it have their genesis in spiritual issues. And so, but I do think that they certainly affect us in a spiritual way, and we can benefit from a spiritual intervention. To some extent, it's the same thing. I mean, if we get to the diagnostic aspect of it, is if you go in it just saying, well, I just know this is a spiritual problem. And you can get online and look up websites on your ministry websites that'll tell you that this disorder is this demonic thing or this sin or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. I mean, you're finding a lot of, you need to sit down with a trusted individual and talk through with that. And really, I think a balanced approach is really more appropriate than to kind of focus on any one thing. Absolutely have people pray for you. Absolutely pray for healing. Absolutely study the scriptures. But God has provided for us individuals who understand how your brain works, and individuals who develop medication. And the thing that always surprises me is you'll find people that are very happy going to have someone work on their heart or take medication around their heart or their liver or whatever, but that same person would say, I shouldn't take medication for a mental health problem. And that, again, that's just a naive understanding of our bodies and how we've been created. I've never seen the conflict, but I had certainly run into it all the time. And so I think we have to follow the same, sit down with a trusted individual to discuss the issues. If you believe, if you would like to have a spiritual component to your mental health treatment, then you just need to look for a therapist or a psychologist that provides that. They're out there. Or you may see a pastor or a minister in addition to a secular therapist, and you may have them work together to work on your problem. But I don't really think it's an either or. I think, incorporating it all together is really the way to go. I mean, if medication is beneficial to people, and certainly we know that you can name off any medication for all antibiotics, anything. Well, then we know all good things come from above. I mean, that's what the scriptures tell us. And so if that's a good thing, if it benefits us, then I don't really see anything wrong with it.
Well, that's a powerful message. And it kind of reminded me to remind the listeners that incorporating mental health training, even in your own faith community, that can be really helpful as well. That's what our Gateway to Hope program does. We train individuals on how to respond to a mental health crisis. And then right there, you've got people to talk to that are trained and well equipped. And all of that training is, of course, free of charge, just like all of our services here at HHCI. So I'm going to leave all of that information in the show notes. And if you're listening, feel free to browse our website. We have so many different things if you want to learn about different mental health disorders because you're curious, or you want to talk to someone directly. We have free 30-minute peer counseling over the phone with our Hope Line. We also do a variety of different one-on-one therapy treatments. So we highly encourage you to go to our website, hhci.org. And as we approach the holidays, our Hope Line is going to be running through the holidays as well. So just a really great resource while a lot of places might be closed and winding down for the year. Matt, I just want to say thank you so much for an awesome year on this podcast. I'm really excited for next year. Thank you to everyone who has listened that we didn't think would listen, but they're here. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Emily. And hey, if you're out there and you've got an idea for a topic or you have a question, please send it to us. We might be able to use it for one of our programs next year.
Definitely. You can email me at contact@hhci.org and we'll definitely get to your question. So, all right. Thanks so much.